Hello, everyone. Good morning. I hope you can hear me okay, and welcome to day 2 of this great event. I apologize I couldn't join you yesterday. I really badly wanted to, but maybe you could tell by the sound of my voice, I wasn't doing very well, and today I'm better than yesterday, so I'm really happy to be here and taking the presentations and to hopefully meet some of you in person. It's quite a pleasure to be standing on stage when if I look back to when this event first started being an idea, well, first started being in a conversation, then to an email, then to ideas, and a lot more happening through then, to just be here and see it come to fruition is quite an amazing accomplishment. I remember talking to Philip at some point. We were on a call and I said, wow, what a lineup you've put together here. Just scrolling through the speakers to some of you in this room, and I'm said, if we can help make this happen, it would be quite a room full of a lot of learning for all of us. So maybe if we could just give Philip a round of applause for all of his work. Behind the scenes, there's a lot happening to make this look as effortlessly as possible, and that's also a big thanks to our conference team, who some of you may meet today. So this is quite exciting because we're here as a publisher. We're an academic publishing house, MDPI, and I'm going to share a little bit about us just to give you context of who we are and a bit about our business, as I think there could be some interesting things you can learn from us and maybe consider for your own business practices. But as I'm listening to some of these conversations, there's already some things starting to align and very interesting for me. Obviously, thank you to Thomas for sharing such a history on the city of Baden. I'd be remiss not to acknowledge that our former CEO lives in Baden with her family, Delia. She's the one that hired me at MDPI over 5 years ago. We also have current colleagues who live in Baden. So outside of all the great success it has as a city, it's also a wonderful place for people to live and raise their families. And I enjoy coming to visit here as well. And also, Rico, thank you for your insight. It's a nice reminder when we face these moments of uncertainty, especially with new technologies being developed and wondering what's going to stick. What does this mean for the way we work? And just from my experience, something I've seen is, there were always, we've been faced with the change of technology since the dawn of time, and it's not going to stop. It's something we have to embrace, to use the tools we need to help us do the work we need to do. But underneath all of that is, these underlying factors of how people connect as humans. Still, people want to be seen, people want to be heard, people want to feel safe, people want to feel recognized. And so you can have thousands of apps, but you got to make sure we're still getting at the core crux of these human elements that are going to be inevitable, and sometimes that only happens through human connection. So with that being said, I will start to share a little bit more about our company. And before I get into it, I think I'll mention, maybe as we talk about business models, we're leaning into sustainability and resilience. I like to think of MDPI in some regard as it has a triple bottom line. If you think about it, obviously we're a digital company, so all of our publishing is online. So our footprint from an sustainability standpoint is very low. Obviously, we also invest a lot of money from our sustainability foundation, which I can speak to a little bit more as well, into funding sustainability research, the latest sustainability research and projects. We invest a lot in our people. Our company grew about 30% last year alone. We're at 8,500 people now. Year prior to that was 6,500. So there's a big growth, not only creating careers, but training people when they come on board. So and training internally and externally, we really give opportunity for people to identify classes that can help upskill their knowledge and then reapply that back to our work. So as Rico mentioned, it's not all just about having a business and being an entrepreneur that makes profit just for the business. It's obviously hitting the environment, the people, and the other aspects, which we like to do. So with that being said, I'm not sure how familiar some of you are with publishing. This is I think my colleague Lilian, who's in the room, put this together for me in in a very basic term, and it's meant to be just that, to walk you through a basic understanding of how, if you're a scientist or an author, maybe a PhD, postdoc, a researcher, you do your research and you say, okay, I have my findings, I want to publish this research. Well, the next thing you start to do is talk to your lab mates or people within your field, and they might recommend some journals that are relevant to your field of research. So from an author, then you're going to look for the journal that makes most sense for your research, and then you're going to submit your article to that journal. As a publishing house, we have 500 journals. I'll share a little bit more about what open access is, but we're a fully open access publisher. But there's many publishers in all sorts of fields. Subscription-based publishers, there's many variations of open access. There's green, gold, bronze, etc. So we all have journals, and then you would submit your article to a journal that's relevant to you. From that point on, majority of the time, it is peer-reviewed by experts. I say majority of the time because there are some publishers that are testing this peer review process in a different way, trying to find innovative ways to challenge a system that's been around for hundreds of years, and they have every right to do so. But it's hard to get around this because this peer review is an essential part of vetting the research that you submit. You have colleagues in your field reviewing the article and then giving you feedback, and then you make the adjustments necessary to make it as a legitimate article for publishing. And then an academic editor, this is an external academic editor within your field, will review the article, the review reports, etc., and make a decision on, yes, this is legitimate to be published, or no, this needs quite a bit more work, go back and come back when it's ready. And then once the article is published, it depends on which journal you publish with, which publisher that belongs to. So in our case, we're an open access publisher. Then it becomes freely available for everyone to access, or it can be published in a subscription-based publisher where the reader has to pay to access it. And I'll explain those models a little bit more in a moment. The main thing, one of the main benefits that you could take away from this, if you understand the difference between both open access and subscription, is that as an author in open access, you get to retain complete copyrights of your work. When you publish with a subscription-based publisher, you hand those copyrights to them. The journal, the publisher owns your work, your copyright. They can decide what to do with it. You don't really have much to say after that. But with open access, it's your work. We just host it. We put it out there for people to access, and then you can use this data again however you like. You don't need to ask an open access publisher for permission what to do with your work. And this is called a CC BY license, which is one of the main attractive and benefits for an author per se to publish in open access. So one thing to think about in open access is that open access is just one part of a larger umbrella called open science. And open science is pretty much a model that's trying to make results of scientific articles open, and open science seems to make the entire process open. So open access is just the article, but then you have open data. Then you could go to preprints, and then you can have to open peer review. And so there's many aspects of making information open and available, and open access is just one part of open science. So the benefits to some of this is obviously transparency, which is a key in the way we operate. The public availability and reusability of this data as well, and the accessibility, which is a key point. I'm not sure if you can see, but we try to add some of the SDGs that this kind of work impacts from number 9, 10, and 17 in this case, and we'll have more of those along the way. And thanks, Lily, for helping with this. So open science is about making scientific research data and dissemination accessible at all levels. Again, we focus as an open access publisher. So while we're doing a really good part of open science, there's still other areas we need to continue to push for, example, open data and open peer review. So some of the benefits to this is greater visibility of research, the increase of publicly funded research, and private sphere too. So if someone is being funded, the research, everyone gets to see the research that's made available. It's not hidden behind a paywall. It's accessible to everyone. And that also creates faster transfer knowledge because you could tap into it, share it, use it as build on it, collaborate with other with other authors as you see fit, and create a network. Because we have these special issues and topical collections where we bring together authors from different fields to work on a topic together, very interdisciplinary, and it's a fascinating way to see research come about as well. You can see the way the funding is impact society. So you can see there's a specific term for it, and I'm sorry if I'm losing a little bit the terms I want to say. It's because the way I'm feeling right now. What was the term for scientific resident? It basically means that the average person who's not a science can access the science because it's freely available, take that knowledge and see how they can apply it within their everyday circumstances. And there's a specific term for that. It's just escaped my mind. And then open access also helps policymakers. So there's a great website you can go to and you could see how many of MDPI's papers have been referenced or cited in policy documents to show that the research that we publish is impacting policy in that regard in government agencies as well, because it's very easy to access. NIH, WHO, et cetera. Our papers are all through there, cited through to support their work. So these are some of the benefits that I wanted to outline as per that. MDPI in particular, to our company, we're a 100% open access publisher. I say this because there are publishers who are transitioning. There's a lot of mandates and expectations and policies saying from governments that want more open access. So now you have traditional publishers that are more subscription-based working to transition their portfolio to open access. It's a slow process. It's not easy. The benefit we have is from the very get-go, 30 years ago, actually, this will be our 30th anniversary since inception, is everything we've been doing has been open access. So we're well positioned, and that's why we do well in that regard. We have over 500 journals. We actually have 501. We just hit 500 journals in Christmas time last year. And the numbers underneath that, what WOS stands for is called Web of Science, and Scopus is another. These are indexing bodies, and what that means is that they are third-party platforms that index journals industry-wide based on many levels of criteria, quality criteria. So Web of Science has 24 quality criteria, and they'll evaluate a journal to say if this journal meets all this criteria, then they will index this journal in their database. And that is, now many of these databases exist, but there's some specific ones that really hold a lot of weight, if you will, a lot of prestige. And in that regard, we're very proud to have a large part of our journals indexed in the Web of Science, indexed in Scopus, indexed into the Directory of Open Access Journals, which is DOAJ. When you see a lower number, it's because we have also a lot of new journals, and those journals take time to develop until they can then be submitted to be indexed. So while you might see 400 journals in DOAJ, while we have 500, we've recently launched a lot of journals over the past years, and those journals take time to establish before they can be submitted for evaluation in these indexing bodies. And I apologize if some of you already know this. I'm just cognizant some of you might not, and I want this to make sense so it's relevant knowledge for you. Some things you might not be aware of, and we talk about giving back, almost 50% of the articles we published are waived, meaning we waive the fee associated to it. How we make money is through, as a business, is called an APC, an article processing charge. This is where the author has the say on where they want to publish, and the author is the one that pays for it. Many of these authors have funding for their research. As part of that, they have their funding can offset the cost for submission and publishing. On average, our APC is about 1,600 Swiss franc. If we look at the lower end of our journals, which is our newer journals and our very well-established journals, which can go up to 2,700 Swiss franc. So in the grand scheme of all publishers, we're the most affordable and most accessible when it comes from an APC cost. And that's why we're able to attract a lot of people to submit to us, because it is affordable for them relative to some of the APC costs from other publishers. We do publish some Diamond open access journals. Diamond means these are actually free for publishing. They work with a funding body that supports the publishing fee for the authors. And while we're fully open, we're fully gold open access, means 98% of our journals are gold open access where the author pays. We do have some diamond when we're just supporting the infrastructure for this journal, but it's funded from an external body. We reinvest at scale. Being a big business allows us to reinvest in a large way to support authors, reinvest in research communities and different ways to push open science forward. Outside of publishing articles, we have many different initiatives that we create in-house to support the scholarly community as a whole. I won't get into each of those initiatives because there's quite many, but we invest a lot of money back into not only the business, but creating tools to support the scholarly community. And we do that by creating community platforms. And I'm happy to say, of course, we have a very high author satisfaction rate. But some of our core numbers, as I said, 30 years in experience, 501 open access journals, 8,500 employees at the start of the year. We've worked with almost 4 million authors worldwide. We've probably published an article with an author from every country, and I'll give some more numbers to that in just a moment. So some of our core values, I won't get into any of these, but I do think there's a few I should highlight that may be relevant to you and your business. Out of all of these, I would say timeliness and efficiency. I wouldn't just say it, actually, I know it because we survey a lot of people that work that publish with us. Tens of thousands. Our surveys are really up to date to capture not only experience, satisfaction scores, but insights and why and so forth. And when we dig deeper, we see the number one reason people publish with us is timeliness and efficiency. The core unique selling point at MDPI is taking a publishing service and just doing it a lot faster than the average publisher will do it. That was a vision that the founder of this company had when he himself was a chemist, a science, and wanted to publish and didn't want to wait 1, 2, maybe 3 years for his work to be published. Said, how can I speed this process up? How can I find these reviewers? How can I coordinate this part, et cetera? And he found a way to do it, and that kind of picked up. And of course, timing is very important. You got to be at the right time at the right place as well. But he obviously hit something that was a need in that industry, and that is to make things more efficient and timely. And that's something I've kind of learned from my experience, generally speaking, even before MDPI in my previous work experience, is that people will pay for speed. People will pay for convenience. People will pay for competence. So if you can offer those, and MDPI kind of has those pillars built into its business model. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but as I reflect on it objectively, I said, yeah, I can see why people are wanting to work with MDPI. We have those pillar business models, those pillars supporting that business model. In order to scale, we need to keep things as simple as possible. We try to remove some of the bureaucratic aspects of the work in order for it to grow at the scale that we need it to grow. Specifically for Switzerland, we collaborate a lot with Swiss universities. We're very proud to have signed a consortium deal with the Swiss academic libraries. We work with 25 institutions in general. What this means in IOAP is an institutional open access program. All this means is that if the universities on this list are working with us, their students and affiliates receive a discount when working with us. Their librarians get a very easy report and a dashboard to access the collaboration that their university has with us. So we kind of make a seamless collaboration possible that benefits the university. And this is at free cost to the universities. Our goal is to make the partnership as seamless as possible for them by adding some values such as discounts for authors that publish with us, affiliated with them, and making it easy for their librarians to track what's being published with MDPI and their universities. So at a high level, if I just give you a market overview of how publishing has done, and I'll only spend 3 or 4 slides, and this is really high level, in 2025. If we look at, you have closed publishers. These are subscription-based publishers. This could be like Springer Nature, Elsevier, et cetera. And then you have gold open access, which is where we pretty much operate, which is MDPI Frontiers, also another Swiss company based in Lausanne. Hybrid are journals and publishers that do both And then other open access is bronze, green, etc. So this is just to show you how these different publishing systems and platforms have done throughout the years. One anomaly that we saw last year, and I say anomaly because I wasn't sure how to really reference it when I saw it last year, is if you look at closed in the green, you saw actually quite a jump they had. And if you look at it in the years past, they were pretty steady, almost even slowly declining. Well, gold open access, as you can see, was just really, we were in the right place in the right time, really growing over the years. And then last year, we saw closed just have quite a spike up. And then we see this year, it's kind of leveled up. They've stabilized a little bit. Well, for us, it was trying to understand what has caused this. There's many reasons. There's different hypotheses we have and reasons that I won't get to because I can spend quite some time looking at this. But if we just look at it from a performance base, we can summarize that closed models have kind of gone back to stabilizing a little bit. And there's an increase in what is considered hybrid publishings. So I can speak to that separately after. The loss that we saw from gold open access is more towards hybrid journals versus last year. Some of the loss we saw in gold open access went towards subscription, but now subscriptions have leveled off at 37% both years. And then, as you can see, gold open access had a drop of about 4 or 5% that went to hybrid and a little bit in the others. So where does MDPI, our company, our publishing company, sit amongst the publishers, as you can see? Well, just so you know, Elsevier is the largest publisher out there. They're a really large organization. Springer Nature has done really well recently. They IPO'd in, I think, September 2024, if I remember correctly. And they've been doing really well. And there's excellent people that work there. They're wonderful organizations. At MDPI, you can see we're the #1 gold open access publisher amongst everyone and the 3rd largest publisher in the industry. And here's the shift that we've seen from market share wise when we look at different publishers. So we had a slight drop last year, but then we grew 10%, in 2024, but then we grew 10% in 2025. This is pretty standard stuff. We see these shifts happening throughout the industry year over year. Interesting, you see Wiley is another big publisher. They've really started to go towards open access, and they've seen an increase in their open access portfolio and then a drop in their closed as well. I won't get into the specific markets of countries and how we're doing because I think that's not going to be as relevant here. I want to keep it high level for the sake of this conversation. So what does this mean what does open access, the road to open access mean, for example, in Switzerland? Well, this is a QR code that you can scan to see where the funding in Switzerland goes throughout different universities. It's quite specific. And once the Swiss Universities Organization made a decision to switch over to this, you could see the savings that they've already started to earn through this process because of a certain closed deals that they moved away from and moved towards open access. So while open access sounds great, in theory, there are still challenges we face, and there's still things to be considered. So some of the challenges that we face is library budgets are locked into subscription-based publishing platforms and workflows. And these are very long-term working relations that are very difficult to change overnight. We talk to librarians and you could tell sometimes they feel suffocated just from what they've been used to. And even if they want to make a transition to open access, it's not as easy as just like, okay, we go open access. There has to be a whole transition workflow that's locked into, I don't know if I pressed something, that's locked into these standard collaborations with subscription models over a period of time. Transformative agreements are something that has come up in the recent years that has helped subscription-based publishers to try and transition to open access. So they've been given I don't know if you want to call it a deadline, but they've been giving a kind of expectation saying, okay, if you're a subscription-based publisher and you want to go to open access, you could create these things called transformative agreements that allow your journals to go in there. But what really that does is it still gives the subscription-based publishers the contracts that they have with librarians. These are millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts, and also the option to accept open access fees from authors. And this, in my opinion, kind of keeps them in the middle because the business is very good. Now you're getting opportunity to get business from both the institutes and the authors, and they become these kind of moats, in my opinion, where they're just kind of taking their time and they're not really transforming the way we would want to see them. There's obviously prestige bias when it comes to very heritage-based publishers, and that is fully understandable. They've been here a long time, worked for it, well established. But then in turn, it creates, as a new publisher, some skepticism around, okay, we might be considered brand new. Maybe we're considered a predatory publisher, but there's no proper definition of what a predatory publisher is. So in the sense of someone might be skeptical just because we're able to do what they're able to do in a faster way. It's like being innovative in a game changer in an industry that has been so well established, and you're new. If you've experienced this yourself, you know it's going to come with, people are going to be looking at you, questioning your practices, what you do, but we're quite transparent and open in how we operate. And anytime we have conversations with any organization, you could see they start to understand why we're successful, how we operate, who we are, et cetera. So I feel like there's still challenges that face not only MDPI, but open access in general, because open access is relatively new when you look at publishing as a whole. But there's great opportunities ahead of us. Obviously, we can work really hard to make open access undeniable. There's a lot of organizations working on this to make that happen. We obviously impact policy and public through the research that's available, and advance equity through our collaborations. And this is another example of those collaborations. What I want to say is we overall, there's probably close to 38 million open access articles to date, and more than half of them are Go to Open Access. So people are choosing to publish Go to Open Access. In my opinion, anytime in any industry you give the consumer an opportunity to make a decision is a good thing, because people will want to decide where they want to spend their money and how they want to spend their money. And Go to Open Access is one example of that. If you're an author, you might say, I want to publish in this journal, not only the journal that my library has a contract with, so therefore I want to make this decision. And Go to Open Access is an example of putting the author in the center of that decision making. So as we wrap up the last few slides, this is an example of how SDGs and open access go hand in hand. Obviously reduced inequalities. We remove the barriers of access to information. All of our research is freely made available. That's published. You don't need to log in. You don't need to you literally go to our website, pick the journal, click on the article. It's all there. You can download it. You could share it. This is great. I mean, anytime I go to conferences or I talk to people, sometimes I hear, like, you guys are like a vault of knowledge. And it's wonderful because we have so many articles that are just accessible for people to access all that information and build their own research on. Quality education, it saves institutions cost that can be reinvested. There's a lot of costs associated with subscription-based, like I said, to have those contracts with libraries and certain publishers. It can go into the tens, if not hundreds of millions. So open access avoids all of that. It expands the collaboration between public and private, and it helps create innovation by giving access to society and most up-to-date information. So the future, excuse me, my voice is almost, together with as I said at the beginning, open access, the way we operate is just the start. Really, the goal should be open science. There's no one size fits all. We're a publisher. We're not trying to say our way is the only way of doing things. There's other publishers that offer different publishing services, different journals that are more relevant to that author. So I think the beautiful thing about our ecosystem of publishing is it's quite diverse, and it gives authors an opportunity for these publishers to play a role at different parts of the author's life cycle. If you're an early career researcher, this journal or this publisher makes sense for you. If you're established here, so there's no one size fits all. Everyone's just got to play a role in supporting the publishing ecosystem, but also to moving future open access forward. And I'll say for us at MDPI in particular, we're going to continue to invest in people and technology. When we have an AI team, we create quite a few AI tools, but the purpose of these tools are always to support our decision-making as people, as humans, as editors. We never let AI kind of make the final decisions for anything that we do. We're going to try and have a more role into policy and education. When we go and talk to organizations, we ask, what do you need? What could be helpful for you? And if there's anything we could do. So we have a lot of data and information so we can curate reports that help organizations make decisions that they need to know. And Go to Open Access has been the engine for progress, and we need to continue to have every open access model, not only Gold, Diamond, and some of the other ones I couldn't really define for you, to make that movement to 100% open access. Right now, we're at about 50% of the articles published are open access. The question, that took about 20 years to get there. The question is, how do you convert the other 50%? And that's going to be a very challenging task. But that's the role we all play in within the publishing industry. So with that being said, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for taking time to learn more about MDPI. And if you have any questions, please follow up with me here or any of my colleagues. Thank you. Enjoy the day.